I don't know exactly when I started wandering through the deserted streets of that forgotten city, but I clearly remember the cold night air and the flickering lights that hinted at something out of the ordinary. As I walked aimlessly through the city center, my footsteps echoed along the empty sidewalks. Then, as I turned a corner, I found myself face to face with a massive red and gold striped awning, rising majestically under a sky heavy with clouds. The sight of the circus surprised me, as it seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, as if it had always been part of that abandoned urban landscape. A soft, yet hypnotic melody drifted from old loudspeakers, blending with the whisper of the wind and drawing me in with an almost irresistible force. As I approached, I noticed that the area around the circus was steeped in a peculiar atmosphere. There was an electric energy in the air, something that made my skin tingle and my senses sharpen. Without understanding why, I felt an unusual peace, as if all the troubles and anxieties of the world had been temporarily silenced. The main entrance, adorned with ornate arches and velvet curtains, seemed to call to me, inviting me to step into a parallel universe where anything was possible. The moment I crossed the gates, I was immediately enveloped by a sense of euphoria. The interior of the big top was a mosaic of colors and shadows. Every corner concealed something both enchanting and mysterious. At the center, beneath the glow of a warm spotlight, artists and performers moved with a grace that defied logic. There were contortionists who twisted together as if gravity did not exist, acrobats who executed impossible leaps, and illusionists who transformed the ordinary into the extraordinary. I soon realized that the spectacle was more than just performances. There was something deeply hypnotic about every movement, every note of music that resonated. I remember losing myself in the gaze of a beautiful animal tamer, whose gentle gestures and whispered words seemed to command not only the beasts, but also the thoughts of those who watched her. Beside me, silent and imposing, a strong man of few words executed a feat of strength that balanced brutality and delicacy in an almost poetic way. As I surrendered to the enchantment, something subtle began to manifest around me. At first, I paid little attention. After all, the atmosphere was so captivating that any strange sensation seemed insignificant compared to the grandeur of the show. Amid the hushed applause and nearly imperceptible murmurs, I noticed some people slowly moving away from the glow of the ring. Glancing sideways, I saw that some of them were collapsing, as if they had lost the very will to remain there. Their bodies fell gently, without pain or screams, as though the circus had absorbed something vital from them. At first, this sight did not trigger any panic in me. The magic of the performance was so immersive that the notion of danger dissolved, turning the extraordinary into something almost natural. I kept watching, captivated by the details, the subtle smiles of the performers, the meticulous precision of each act, the perfect harmony between light and sound. Each performance made me feel as though I was part of a grand and mysterious ritual where time and logic became secondary. As the night progressed, the symphony of images and sounds intensified. The lights flickered more brightly, and the music seemed to pulse in sync with my own heartbeat. That was when I first noticed, almost imperceptibly, a growing emptiness within me. It wasn't a frightening or painful void. It was something that crept in gently, as if a part of my essence was being slowly absorbed by that extraordinary environment. Yet again, the circus's spell made me dismiss any warning signs. My only desire was to remain there, mesmerized, savoring every second of this unique spectacle. I vividly remember one particular moment when the audience fell silent in awe of an especially breathtaking performance. At the center of the ring, a ballerina floated through the air, her movements flowing like water. Her steps were so delicate and precise that for a brief instant, the world around us seemed to pause. Around me, people stood motionless, ensnared in a spell that prevented them from reacting. Even as some spectators began to faint and collapse, I remained still, lost in the beauty of what I was witnessing. The circus, with its almost magical aura, had the power to transform any unease into pure admiration. As the performance continued, small details began to accumulate, forming a disquieting picture. Whispered conversations among the spectators mentioned names and stories that could not possibly belong to this place, tales of people who had vanished without a trace, of souls lost in the mist of time. Yet these murmurs felt distant, almost unreal, compared to the grandeur and hypnosis that had overtaken me. I couldn't help but marvel at the complexity of the spectacle, even though, in some corner of my mind, a vague doubt tried to creep in. As the night deepened, the atmosphere within the circus grew almost tangible. The lights became more intense, casting shadows that danced almost sinisterly against the canvas walls. The audience, mostly entranced, allowed themselves to be carried away by an ethereal calm, as if each individual were connected by an invisible thread of enchantment. Amidst this atmosphere, every laugh, every sigh seemed orchestrated by a greater will, a force that did not need to be understood to be felt. At one of the spectacle's climactic moments, during a sequence where the performers synchronized their movements with breathtaking precision, I felt a strange lightness in my body, as if the weight of the world was dissolving. It was in that instant that I subtly realized something was changing within me. It wasn't fear, but an odd sensation of detachment, as though a part of me was being drawn away, though I couldn't fully comprehend what was happening. Yet, amidst the surreal beauty of that moment, this realization dissolved, quickly swallowed by the enchantment of lights and sounds. The following moments were a whirlwind of emotions and images intertwining in an almost dreamlike manner. The circus felt like a universe of its own, where time folded and reality twisted. Each act, each performance was a doorway to a world where the impossible became ordinary. And even as people around me fainted or were swept away by the tide of enchantment, I found myself utterly absorbed, wishing only for the wondrous show to continue forever. As the performance went on, the awareness that something vital was slipping away from me became increasingly faint, almost imperceptible. I did not question whether this was a harbinger of something terrible or merely another detail of the magic that filled the circus. My only ambition was to keep my eyes fixed on the performance, absorbing every nuance, every movement, every note that echoed through the grand tent. It was as if, amid a sea of uncertainties, this spectacle was the only certainty of my existence in that moment. That night seemed to stretch into eternity, where the real and the imaginary blurred in a continuous hypnotic dance. The circus, with its inexplicable magic, created a bubble of enchantment where nothing else mattered. And even when the signs that something was amiss multiplied, the murmur of distant voices, footsteps seeming to come from all directions, the vacant gazes of those who faded away, I remained serene, mesmerized, almost oblivious to it all. There was no trace of fear or concern within me, only an immense satisfaction, as if each second was immortalized in a symphony of lights and shadows. I let myself drift, a quiet smile on my lips, carried by the wonder the circus provided. The spectacle continued, and I did not want it to end. As the final act approached, the performers gathered for a grand finale that seemed to encapsulate the very essence of this hypnotic universe. At the center of the ring stood a solitary figure, perhaps the ringmaster, whose name echoed like a whisper, guiding the climax of the show. With gentle gestures and a voice imbued with an almost supernatural calm, he orchestrated a sequence of acts blending poetry, acrobatics, and an aura of mystery that made every spectator feel part of something greater than themselves. I was overcome by an indescribable wave of emotion. The sensation of weightlessness I had noticed earlier now intensified, but instead of causing unease, it filled me with immense joy. I could not look away, nor did I even notice the subtle disappearance of those around me. To me, the only desire was to remain there, absorbing every second of the magnificent spectacle. Even if, in some dark recess of my mind, there was a vague impression that something was slipping away, I chose to ignore it and focus solely on the hypnotic beauty of that moment. As the final performance unfolded, the atmosphere brimmed with an energy so potent it almost felt tangible. The lights blended with the muffled applause of an audience that, even in silence, radiated an almost palpable ecstasy. Amidst it all, I remained motionless, entranced by the grandeur of what I was witnessing. There was no concern in my thoughts about what might be happening around me. The only reality that mattered was the one woven from lights, sounds, and movements, ensnaring me in a web of pure fascination. As the curtain finally began to fall and the lights dimmed softly, an absolute sense of calm washed over me. I was so absorbed in the circus's enchantment that the outside world seemed like a distant blur, irrelevant compared to the singular beauty of that moment. The performers bid their farewells with graceful waves and enigmatic smiles, and even as murmurs of departure echoed through the space, my heart beat in a serene rhythm as if it knew the show would never have a sad or painful end. Stepping out of the grand tent, the night still lingered outside, with its shadows and mysteries, but within me remained the glow of that unforgettable experience. There was no doubt that I had been transformed, even if I could not fully comprehend what had transpired. I simply felt a deep gratitude for having been part of something so extraordinary, something that transcended a mere performance to become an almost mystical experience. I walked back through the empty streets, the echoes of the circus resonating with every beat of my heart, and a sense of contentment filled my soul. My mind was still adrift in the night's enchantment, oblivious to the whispers of a reality slowly fading around me. What mattered was the certainty that, as long as I could watch that mesmerizing spectacle, everything felt perfect, even if the fate awaiting me remained a silent mystery. And so, without haste and with a serene smile on my lips, I continued on my way, knowing only that the beauty and magic of that circus would follow me in an inexplicable way, like a secret kept under lock and key by the universe. My mind, captivated and immersed in the grandeur of that moment, cared little for whatever was happening behind the scenes of reality. All I wished was to keep watching, absorbing every detail until the show reached its glorious conclusion. That night, as the glow of the lights slowly faded into the horizon and the sounds of the circus blended with the distant murmurs of the city, I felt an indescribable peace. There was no fear, no doubt, only the pure, simple joy of being present in a world where each moment was immortalized by the magic of the performance. And even if to others, the signs of disappearance were a grim warning, to me, it was the pinnacle of a sublime experience, where the only desire was to witness the end of that enchantment without ever interrupting its sweet melody. I hope the circus stays in town for a few more days. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more.